Hi there, welcome back to DSR Ghostwriting on YouTube or LinkedIn, depending on where you're working this. My name is Daniel Rosal. I'm the founder of DSR Ghostwriting, which is a thought leadership writing and marketing agency focused on working with thought leaders, entrepreneurs, agencies, and technology companies in order to plan, execute, and develop their thought leadership campaigns. So for today's video, I wanted to talk about going on radio and what you need to do if you've been invited to appear on a radio show in order to make the most out of that appearance opportunity. Now, it's worth saying that appearing on radio, I'm recording this during the coronavirus pandemic, when we're still very much in remote mode, and so many interviews these days for that reason are being conducted remotely. So if you've done podcast interviews before, you may be familiar with roughly what's required to give a remote interview. But for appearing on radio, there's just a couple more factors to bear in mind, and that's the purpose that I'm making this video. So when we're talking about interacting with radio, the first thing to say really is that despite the advent of podcasts, which typically enjoy niche listenerships, with the exception of the very big podcasts, radio really can enjoy very big listenerships, yes, still in this day and age, and particularly straddling more demographics than your average podcast might. So if you've been invited to appear on radio, whether a producer's reached out to you or whether you have been pitching broadcast media and you've landed for yourself a opportunity to speak on radio, these from a publicity and from a PR standpoint can actually be extremely valuable publicity opportunities. So you want to make the most out of them. Now, in terms of working with the radio, working with radio stations, the main thing to say that I tell people, thought leaders that have got these opportunities, is that producers are the people to know in the radio business. And that also goes for TV, but for radio particularly. So your average radio show, if it's a very small radio show, might just have one producer. A big national show could have a whole team of producers, assistant producers, and researchers. But these are the superheroes, and they really are. The work they do is incredible, that make the show run. The host is just the kind of public face of the show. I mean, they're the show in a sense, but the producers and the production team are basically who makes the radio show happen. So those are the people that, if you pitch a radio show, will probably be responding to your pitch. If a radio show invites you, you'll probably be getting that invitation from a producer and not from the host. So you probably won't have heard of the producer, although some of the better known producers in PR circles can become somewhat known. So the producer is the relationship really, and producers do move around between radio shows. Now, in terms of how it actually works, so just a couple of points really. It's customary for the producer to conduct what's called a pre-interview. The pre-interview will be used by the producer to assess a couple of things. Firstly, your sound quality. So they'll be interested in having you speak from the hardware you would be using during the remote interview. So I'm recording this on a USB condenser microphone, which is what I've been using for all my podcasting and vlogs to date. It's not a bad microphone, but if I were doing radio and I wasn't concerned about visuals, I would have my pop filter set up. I would also be speaking straight into the microphone, because every microphone has a different pickup pattern, and the pickup pattern of this condenser microphone I know is quite narrow. So I would be like this, recording, keeping a good distance. Before I recorded, I would actually maybe do a little test, and I would say, some producers like to ask their guests, what did you eat for breakfast? But a couple of tips is to try to say something that uses plosive consonants, and I don't know if I'm sure there's a better word for breathy H sounds. Hotel, host. I went to the hotel to meet the host to eat some. My brain is not working. And then P's and B's. P's and B's are the plosive, plosive consonants. And when you have a pop filter, that's part of what these are designed to minimize the kind of raspy sound on the microphone. So I'd also say something, for this morning, I ate breakfast. I ate lots of popsicles for my breakfast. It was a breakfast full of popsicles. So I would record about 1 minute of audio using plosive consonants deliberately. Some producers like you to count from 1 to 10. It's kind of all the same, but I would do that yourself if it's the first time using a new microphone, just to test out the audio quality and to make sure that you understand the pickup pattern of that microphone. Second thing, the pre-interview is the producer is kind of seeing that you know what you are talking about. So just be aware that when a producer is talking to you, they might be looking at lining up a few guests, and part of it is they're just seeing, would you be a good fit for the program? Second thing to know about radio. So there's a pre-interview, and then when it actually comes time to go on radio, the producer will typically call you up. So if it's at 2 o'clock, you're coming on at 2:10, they'll give you a time usually, and they'll usually have you call in, or they'll call you 5 minutes before. So typically your interview will be one of two things: a pre-recording, and that's when they will pre-record the segment for later broadcast. And if it's a pre-recording, the radio station may be editing your clip to take out the ehs and the ums and to make it sound a bit better. If it's live on air, just remember that you've got less leeway, and basically what you say is what the listeners are going to be hearing. So they'll generally call you up before, and then they will patch you in to the live broadcast feeds. And that's where a good pair of headphones like these Eddymatics IEMs, these are actually perfect because these are passive noise filtering. So they block out outside noise, and you can really just focus on what you're saying and focus on dictating clearly and slowly into the microphone. The second thing to know about radio is you want to basically know your stuff. So I've come on radio in the US talking about current affairs in Israel and Netanyahu and Trump and all this, and you really want to have your details straight. So what I do is I will print out bullet points. If I want to cite some statistics, I'll print out a list for myself, a one-pager of bullet points and sources, just so that when I come on air, I'm not fumbling for, I think about 20%. I think he said this. I'll have all the information ahead of me. So that's just really important as well, that, whether you're coming on to talk about your the thought leadership you've done, or your company, or your origin story, even if it's material really well, it's actually worth putting together that kind of preparation document. Doesn't have to be huge, just can be a couple of pages, just so that when you come on air, you're fluent, and you're not sort of grasping for statistics that you sort of know, and you go, that kind of stuff. Hope this has been useful. If you are going on radio, just remember that it can be a really valuable PR opportunity. It just does require a little bit of preparation to make the most of them, but get a good microphone, do your audio tests, work with the producers on the show, know your stuff, and everything should go perfectly smoothly. Thanks for watching. For more content from DSR Ghostwriting, please feel free to check out the YouTube channel, subscribe, and follow the company page here on LinkedIn.